Let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin and politics. Obviously, there seems to be a sentiment change. First, it started on kind of the right side of the aisle. It looks now like a lot of Democrats also are becoming more pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto. How important is it for a politician at this point to understand these technologies? And is it fair to say that over the next couple of years, if you're anti this technology, you're probably either going to get voted out or not elected?
So I think the most important week in lots of ways in crypto last year was around the infrastructure bill, when the Biden administration really tried to sneak in a poison pill, or at least, a get you sick pill into that legislation. And the crypto community mobilized. I remember I was in the south of France on vacation, my only vacation I took, and I was on the phone with every senator I knew, but everyone was. More impressively, there was this retail groundswell. There were millions of phone calls placed to congressmen and senators, and DC was shocked. That was the wake-up call when they realized, this is a really powerful voting bloc, and it's often a single-issue voting bloc. Don't screw with my Bitcoin. Don't screw with my crypto. Elizabeth Warren, who has got a lot of clout with the Biden administration, who is very close to the head of the SEC, had a lot of influence about how the Biden administration was thinking. And what is really interesting is Janet Yellen and the president's executive order really had a change in tone recently. It was a change in tone from being negative to being balanced. That's politics. That is not because they saw the light, it's because they wow, we need to pay attention. And there are two things that got them thinking, right? This is about innovation, right? And it's about the little guy. And so I think that narrative is changing in DC. I don't see legislation showing up this year the way politics are set up. We're going to be in a gridlock. But I think the chance of them doing really damaging things has gone way down.
When we start to think about politicians, I think a lot of it is they respond to the average citizen or people who have influence. And one of the things that's important around Bitcoin is the narrative, right? What is the narrative of the moment? And it brings in different groups of people based on what narrative is kind of popular at the moment. In America, we have 8% inflation, probably going higher when the March numbers come out. Is Bitcoin an inflation hedge? Is it a non-correlated asset? Is it a speculation tool? What is the narrative that you think is kind of resonating with the market today?
So I would say Bitcoin is far more important outside of the US than it is inside the US. Right? The US dollar has been very stable against other currencies for a long period of time. And when you look at Lebanon or Russia or Turkey, they haven't been. And so, but every macro investor, every common citizen can look and see what we're spending and realize with debt to GDP at 140%, it's really hard to see solving that issue without inflating your way out. And now we're seeing 8% inflation. And so it's becoming part of a portfolio for institutions, part of a portfolio. And I think the narrative isn't that we're going to replace the dollar with Bitcoin. It's not that I'm going to buy these fancy shoes in Bitcoin. It's that I'm going to take some of my wealth and preserve it and store it there as an asset. Right now, it's still correlated to the NASDAQ. That correlation is starting to break down, right? It used to have a beta of 4, now it's got a beta of 2. Why is it correlated? Because most people bought risk assets and bought Bitcoin because the Fed was pumping in so much money. And so what drove prices up, inflation, is driving both NASDAQ, right? Stocks, believe it or not, are an inflation hedge, right? It's hard to remember, but stocks are an inflation hedge. If you have hyperinflation, stocks go way up because they're being repriced. And so there will continue to be a correlation. It'll break down some.
We've seen